in terms of, you know, what is success to you? You know, how do you measure success in your organisation? How do you know that you're healthy and you're going to be sustained in 2014? How do you know that? What are the indicators of success for you? And we know that throughout the world, I mean, internationally, third sector organisations, it's a massive sector. Some organisations that work in the community are the catalyst for some of the greatest social changes and innovations around the world. I mean, I don't think that our country, because there's at least 700,000 organisations that work throughout Australia, and are vital to the health and the sustainability of the community, not just the sector. So I really want to suggest to you that in today's complex and actually quite competitive, even though sometimes we don't like to admit it, but it is competitive sometimes, but it's a very complex environment and sector that we work in. And an organisation's adaptability, agility and ability to manage that constant change through innovation, really, it might be that you're key to success. And if when I said to you, you know, how do you measure success, if innovation wasn't the word that came to you, maybe we need to think about that. You know, how many times do you use the word innovation throughout your organisation? How much do you look at how you can improve and how you can embed the success that you're achieving into how you develop your organisation? So I just wanted to start off with that as a kind of broad question, and as we talk today, I want you to keep that in mind and maybe some, you know, make some notes to yourself around what is success for us. How do we know that we're healthy and we're sustainable? So the third sector in Australia, we know, as I just mentioned, is a massive sector. In fact, it's worth over 75 billion annually. Which actually makes it bigger than the communications, agriculture and tourism industries together. So we are a massive sector, and it's growing every year through the processes in and the funding and how the sector is working. So it's not slowing down. Now, if we took away that sector, if we just said, as of tomorrow, our organisations are not going to be here, I mean, can you imagine what would happen to our country? It would be disastrous, not only for individuals, but obviously families and whole communities, because not-for-profit organisations, I really believe, are the heart of our communities. We're all about social action, addressing social problems. We're really about creating change in our communities. In fact, we were all founded because we believed in something passionate, and we're out there doing that every day because we believe in what we're doing. So keeping our organisations healthy and successful is really important for everybody, not just us individually, but us as a sector as well. So you can see why I think this is such an important subject to talk about, because we really need to think carefully and clearly about how to make our organisation sustainable. Now the issue is, though, that even though we're growing as organisations, some of you are doing amazingly well in terms of building your donors and funding and the programs that you're doing. I mean, you're doing some amazing stuff, but we still face incredible challenges as a sector and as organisations. And the challenges is what is threatening our sustainability. Because if we can't hurdle these challenges, if we don't know what these barriers are and we're not able to overcome these challenges, then of course our organisation will fall over. So we really need to have a clear understanding about what are the challenges for us and how are we going to address these challenges. And I thought it might be fun just to use a little bit of an analogy here. So this is where I want you to play with me, have some participation. I want you to imagine for a moment that I am at the Olympics and I'm I'm into archery, and I have been working hard up until this moment where this is the defining moment where I might win the gold medal. Now, I'm standing here ready to shoot this arrow. I know what I want to achieve. I know what my mission is. I know what my goal is. But this is the defining moment of whether I'm going to succeed and achieve a gold medal or not. Now, what do you think will help me achieve this successful shot? Okay? I'd like you to write in your little panel there for me. What do you think is going to help me get that bullseye? Let's see what you think. Focus, very good, Kenny. Yes, focus, accurate aim, patience, focus, supportive network, confidence, belief. I'm reading out what you're typing to me here. I'm really liking it. Commitment, yes. What else? What else is going to help me? And remember that it's not just this moment, is it? What has brought me to this point? Think about that as well. Balance, yes, very good. Passion, the right people, talent, yes. Training, equipment and training, persistence. You get it, you're doing really well. I'm liking all your answers. Yep, okay. All right, so I think that, yes, you're really getting the idea that to achieve a goal, it's much more than just firing a shot. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of passion and commitment. A lot of you wrote that then. And focus and skill. You don't just get good at something, not normally anyway. You don't just sort of pick up a bow and arrow and be able to fire it perfectly. Okay, you do need a goal and you need to practice it and you need to develop your skill. And you also need strategy, because if you're going to achieve a goal, you need to know how you're going to do that. And certainly anybody who's good at their art in terms of sports has practiced not just their skill, but they have a strategy that they're working on that's unique to them sometimes because they know what works for them. It also does involve teamwork, because even sports like archery, where it's one person, I mean, it's not just that person that's got them to this point. There's a whole lot of other people involved, your trainers, your support crew, just your mentors, all the people that are in your life that are supporting you towards success, that are helping you get to this point. Nobody actually wrote a lot of failed shots as well, because in actual fact, to get good at what you do, sometimes you do need to fail and you need to learn from that failure. And sometimes that means reflecting and sitting down and working out, why did that go wrong? Why didn't that work as well as we wanted it to? How could we do better next time? So a lot of reflection in order to become resilient. It also actually involves you participating. You actually have to get out there and start doing something and actually trying, to become better at what you do. Quite correctly, some people said it takes equipment as well and good resources. In terms of this analogy, you can't get that bullseye if you don't have a bow and arrow. So you need the right equipment. And of course, when you're at the Olympic level, you need really good equipment as too. There's no point in doing a cheap bow and arrow that cost $1 down at the dollar shop. Okay, people who get good at what they do, they have really good resources. They don't skimp on cheap, equipment and technology. They know that if they're going to be really good at what they do, they have to have the best equipment and the right equipment. They're also really good at predicting when things are going wrong as well. In terms of, if I was standing here shooting this arrow and there was winds coming and I was outside and maybe it was starting to rain, or it was hot, there's lots of other environmental issues that I need to be aware of in terms of what's going to affect my ability to get my goal. And that also is a great analogy for us as organisations. We need to be very aware of our surrounding environment. If we're only ever focused on ourselves or our own goal, we're going to miss some really important environmental factors, or just factors that are going on externally sometimes to us that might affect our ability to get that goal. So we need to have not only focus in terms of what our goal is, but we also need to have that really good wide vision as well. And we need to take all of these thoughts into play when we're working in our organisations. So all of these things come into play when we take this shot, and it's a journey. It's something that we're practicing and we're doing every day in your organisations, and so it's really important. So what is sustainability then? Well, it's the ability to endure and survive in an environment into the future. So we know that what we're doing is achieving our goals, and hopefully as organisations you've all established what your mission and your objectives are. But it's the ability to endure and survive in a wider environment and in your organisation to ensure that you're sustainable. So it places an emphasis on future long-term goals for your organisation. So we're really looking at a long-term view. And if you're only ever focused on the short-term goals, then you're probably not making some really good decisions and some strategic decisions about how you're going to be sustainable in the long term. Sustainability obviously isn't just about being environmentally friendly, and we're not using that word here particularly, but of course it involves it. Okay, everybody is very used to using the word sustainability about the environment, because we know that if we're going to look after our planet and be kind to our world for future generations, then we need to think about sustainability, and it's very topical because everybody realizes that we have to look after our planet and our environment, so that's important to us. But we also really need to think about what does that mean for our own organization. It's not also just about funding, and I'm not going to particularly focus on funding for the next few minutes, although of course everything I'm saying is to do with funding, because the more sustainable you become, the more the money will flow. Okay, so we've got to get the basic things right first. Just getting money, if money is your only ever focus and you just think sustainability is all about money, then I'm really sorry to tell you, but it won't work, because money doesn't make you healthy. Money doesn't make you have great staff and great volunteers. Money doesn't bring the clients in. Money certainly helps, but it is not the only thing that makes you successful. So as I talk today, of course I'm going to implicate that money is involved, but we're going to talk about a sort of broader view about sustainability. Now, as I said, I've been working in this area for a long time, and this is my take and my perspective on non-profit sustainability. And I really believe that it comes down to the fact of whether your organisation has capacity, is resilient, is adaptable, is relevant, and is flourishing and healthy. So that's my belief, is that if you can look at your organisation and say, do we have the capability to do what we want to do? Are we resilient? Are we able to understand the environment and change and adapt to what's going on around us? And are we healthy and relevant to our clients and our community and our donors? So it's quite a holistic view I take, but it comes down to really thinking about two main things. It's looking at success in terms of your systems, your management and your leadership. How well do they run your organisation? If you don't have those things set up, if they're not effective and efficient, then your systems and your leadership will fall around you. But it also really is importantly about your outcomes and the impact that you're making on the community. So are you making the difference that you set out to be? Are you shooting that goal correctly? Are you achieving? Do you know whether you're achieving your impact? I'm going to talk a little bit about that later actually, so I'll just mention it here. So really all of these things, so it's a holistic view of, are we running our organisations well? Do we have the systems and the processes and the policies in place to help our staff and volunteers? Do we know what our impact is that we're trying to make? Are we using the right strategic approaches to achieve what we want to achieve? So I'd like you again just to think about what is threatening your organisation right now to be sustainable. What is it that's not or that's maybe stopping you or is not allowing you to be that healthy, flourishing, relevant, adaptable organisation that you may need to really be in 2014? Can you please just type in a few things for me, just ideas for me? Let's see. Diversity of funds, yes. Human resources, good. Lack of agreement at board level, yes, okay, so when there's some board issues. What else are barriers for you or problems, challenges for you? Yes, the ability to manage risks. Think about the challenges that you face every day that maybe take up your time, that you hear people complain about. Yes, effective delegation, so when you're not delegating correctly. Lisa's written, being dictated by a major funder. Yes, so having all your eggs in one basket maybe. So when you've not got a mix of resources or a mix of funding, that can leave you a little bit vulnerable. Competition from other activities in organisations, yes, and look, I think that sometimes we don't like to talk about the fact that there's competition, but the reality is it doesn't have to be a negative word. It just means that there is a lot of people vying for the same funds and the same resources. So your resilience and your sustainability might be how you show that you are creating more impact than other people, or how you're creating more social return on investment. Okay, no income beyond the current financial year. Okay, so it's about really, again, that long-term view of have we got our finances in order. And Paddy's written staff retention. Fantastic, because I'm going to talk about that in a moment, Paddy. So because staff retention is critical to your not only keeping your knowledge within your organisation, but also it costs you an awful lot. And Lara's written burnout as well. Absolutely. All right, I think you're getting some of the idea that, and what you're saying is absolutely correct, is all of these things are challenges for you, and it affects your sustainability, because if you can't address some of these challenges, you're not going to have really great, supportive, effective workplaces for your employees. Your employees may leave. Now, in fact, that's another point I want to make in a second, so I'll go back to that. But first of all, I just wanted to show you this this diagram, which is something I've designed after looking at sustainability, and I really have brought it down to 3 key points, although my pillars of best practice is 9 pillars. But I wanted to, and if you want to have a look at those, you can, but I actually wanted to bring it down even simpler than 9 pillars, and I brought it down to 3 key areas of sustainability. And these 3 areas is something that I want to talk about right now, but as an overview then, that it's an integrated approach between role and responsibilities, relationships and results. It's critical about our leadership and management that you have good boards, that your leaders are functioning well, that they are making good decisions, that they're developing the appropriate business model, that they're undertaking strategic planning, that they're looking after the finance and they're managing your funding well, and they're leading your staff and your volunteers with vision and competence. So if you don't have those clear roles and responsibilities and the competence from your governing body and your leaders in your organisation, it's going to create a lot of challenges for you. Also, it's about results. As I said, if you're not able to define what you do and why and what outcomes you deliver, it's going to be hard for you to make some strategic decisions. It's also going to make it hard for you to approach funders and approach sponsors to be able to show them what you're doing and the critical importance of what you're doing. So it's a very critical part of this model, is that you understand what you're trying to achieve, and then you're able to evidence the impact that you're creating. And it's also about relationships, both internally and externally. How you engage your staff, your volunteers, your donors, the community, your clients. It's looking quite broadly at relationships in terms of how do people get involved with you and how do they support you. How do you share your vision with them, and how do you create effective partnerships with them over the long term? So that's an overview of what I want to talk about now. Now I'm going to spend a few minutes going into each of these into a little bit more depth, just to kind of really explain to you the importance of what this means. So the first one I want to just talk about is the mission-driven governance and leadership. Now, I don't know, but most organisations that I've worked with, I've worked with some really great boards as well, so I know they're out there, but I find that a lot of boards have a lot of challenges because it's a very responsible role. They often don't meet very often. It's usually a mix of volunteers who come from a very wide range of backgrounds and ideas. You know, some are very, you know, professional in terms of they might be lawyers, accountants and business people. And then you've got your other board members that are often very practical, very community minded. They might even be, you know, representing your clients. So you've got a whole range of people that are sitting on your board, and they have a tremendously complex and important role to play. They have significant legal and moral duties in terms of the decisions that they make, and that brings up a whole lot of issues for how people work together and as I said, the decisions that they make. And typically they don't like to get involved in fundraising. Many don't. They don't really see that as their role, so they kind of don't get involved in fundraising. They don't want to know anything about it. They think that's somebody else's job. So that can be hard, and they often don't get involved in corporate sponsorships either. So unless you're a very tiny, small organisation where, you know, your board is your staff, then typically you find that your board has a lot of things to achieve in their meetings that might be only once a month or a couple of times a month. So it's very easy for boards to become dysfunctional very quickly. Dysfunction, of course, makes your governance ineffective. So if you're not working well at board level, if you're not making good decisions, if you're not leading the organisation with vision and strategicness, then of course that's going to have a knock-on effect of what you do and what your organisation is all about. So I'm not suggesting in any way, shape or form that you sack your board right now if they are a little bit dysfunctional. I mean, I'm just making it out there. I'm just putting it out there that there's a lot of boards that find it difficult to work, especially if they don't know what their roles and responsibilities are. And there's an awful lot of you know, ideas about what boards should be spending their time on. So I'm not saying we don't need boards. We absolutely need boards, and what I'm saying is that we need to build their skills and capacity so that they really know how to make good decisions, so that they know how to take risks, and they know how to manage funding well, and they go and seek out new funding opportunities. They know, they're very clear in their role about what they do and what their responsibility is as a leader of the organisation. Now, in terms of this this segment then of this pie, really, I wanted to talk about unethical behaviour, and I'm not saying boards are all unethical, okay? I'm not, but it's just this is a really important thing that I'm seeing all the time now when I'm working with organisations, and it's really becoming quite critical in the fact that we look at making sure that the culture and the behaviours within our organisation are really ethical, and we know that we have the systems and the policies and the leadership qualities within our organisation to protect ourselves from unethical behaviour. What I've got on screen now is just some research that's been done recently into looking at unethical behaviour in organisations. And unfortunately, we're seeing more unethical behaviour than ever before, and that's obviously extremely sad for the non-profit sector, because it is both the same in for-profit and non-profit. And if you've worked in the sector a little while, you'll know that really it doesn't matter that we're in the non-for-profit sector. We'd like to think that we're all very compassionate and we, don't rip our organisations off, but unfortunately it happens all the time. So this is really about saying, how do we understand in our own organisation what the risks are in terms of unethical behaviour, and how do we put some safeguards, I suppose, around for our staff and our organisation. They did some research around what happens if businesses and organisations are unethical, and they found that a staggering 93% of respondents believe that misconduct leads to the loss of public trust and reputation damage. So 93% of people realise that if we can't work ethically and make good decisions, and if we don't protect our reputation as an organisation and as a sector, we are going to lose funders, we are going to lose donors, and we are going to lose staff as well. So I read a great quote recently by the CEO, past CEO he was, of the HSBC Investment Bank. He's now an arts benefactor, and he recently said that he stressed the value of honesty, and he said major donors would insist on it before committing their support. He believes that funders these days are much more interested in the governance and how directors of boards are chosen and exactly what their role is. And he says that he often asks boards to tell him the original ideas behind their charities. And he says that donors will want to see that you're sticking to your core business. So really it's about, if you think from your donors and your sponsors' perspective, and you need to be standing there with honesty and integrity, and you're telling them that you're a great organisation that behaves integrally, then of course you need to display that and know that you're doing that. So the reason why I go on a lot about trust and confidence and ethical behaviour is because trust and confidence is the one thing that you can lose in an instant. If you don't have good policies and procedures and systems in place, it only takes a few Facebook posts or a few Twitter comments to really pull your organisation down. So bad news, unhappy donors, and your reputation can be lost in a moment because of social media, largely because of social media, but because also people are very willing to talk to other people about your organisation, especially when they're not happy with you. Okay, you probably know that there's research out there that says, while one happy, satisfied customer will tell 5 people about their good experience, an unhappy person is more likely to tell 100 people about bad things, or if they're disgruntled. So really, the ability for your organisation to be reputable, and you probably know the well-known recent example of Lance Armstrong. He lost as much as $200 million in future earning potential, and because of his, what was revealed about his loss of integrity, etc. 2 days after he was officially stripped from the record 7 Tour de France titles, Armstrong was asked to repay up to $16 million from those people who had sponsored him and supported him. So he had to give back a lot of money that people had entrusted in him to achieve his goals. And yes, I'm pretty sure he's had some very sleepless nights, but that's what happens when you don't live your life with integrity. Now, of course, that had a massive backlash on his charity that he founded, Live Strong. He had to walk away as the chairman of the cancer charity that he set up, and he had to try and protect any negative effects, which of course there were many, because of his association with them. So I suppose I'm using that as an example for you to think about, you know, what are the integrity of the people involved in your organisation, especially your board of management, but everybody. You know, how are you protecting your reputation? How are you protecting your funds and your donations, and making sure that people trust and have confidence in the way that you're running your organisation? And I really want to end this, and I'm sort of really, I suppose I feel like I'm sort of honing in on this a little bit, but I just see it in so many organisations and how this threatens organisations, is that ability to not be compromised. Because today, when we're always wanting money and we want, I mean, look, money is important to us and we can't do what we do without money, but when we're just grabbing at anything and we're just willing to do anything to get money, it compromises our values, it compromises our mission. I mean, you know, just take an example of a youth organisation that's promoting health and well-being. If a sponsor came along who was from a tobacco or alcohol company, you know, would you take that donation, or would you enter a partnership with them? You know, you need to think very, very carefully and have some critical frameworks in place to help you make decisions like that, because you need to make sure that it's not compromising you. And it also means that you have to be really strict about your communications, your marketing, the programs that you run, you know, making sure that, I believe it's about quality, not quantity, because if we're compromised to accept, you know, small amounts of funding that really don't achieve the impact that we're creating, we actually could be creating more harm than good. And ultimately, our clients and our community is going to be damaged because of that, because we're compromising ourselves. So it's really thinking about consistency and, you know, thinking about what we do and why we're doing it. And how many of you got children? If you've got children, particularly if you've got children, I mean, you can understand this anyway, but if you've got children, you know that everything you do as a parent has an effect on your child's mental capacity, but also behaviour, okay, because you are role modelling how you want your children to behave and the character that you want to create. So if you're a leader of an organisation, whether you're on the board or just a manager or the CEO, everything that you do is having an impact on the culture of your organisation and how it thinks and operates. So it's really important for you to get your vision and your values and your frameworks in place. It's really important for you to have a leadership development program and a performance management process, so that you can unearth, you know, if people are not behaving the way that you want them to, or if they're not being ethical. So, yeah, I'm just sort of challenging you on this in terms of thinking about how can we protect ourselves. The other thing that there's been a lot of research done around is around the credibility of your management, because of course if you're setting up a culture that's saying that you're an integral organisation, that you do what you say you'll do with funding and donations, then of course you're developing this management credibility. And this research talks about, to gain commitment from people who you lead, leaders must be clear and authentic about their values and live and lead by them. So it's an effective way to build trust. Consistency and credibility builds relationships, and relationships build trust. So really I want to ask you, you know, how are you leading your authentic life? Do you have an authentic life every day when you go to work, when you promote your organisation, when you receive funds, when you search for funds? You know, what are you doing to walk the talk, I suppose, in terms of your values and your passion? All right, so that's a little bit about the first piece of the sustainability model, but then I just wanted to go on to impact a little bit. achieving and measuring impact is another critical area that you need to think about. And, you know, I want to ask, do your staff and volunteers understand what they're trying to achieve and what they're trying to do? Because many organisations, unfortunately, rely on anecdotal evidence, or they think they're doing a good job, and they might be. I'm not saying they're not, but they tend to rely on very ad hoc feedback, very anecdotal feedback, to establish whether they're doing good work. And sometimes they don't understand what that impact is. Sometimes they're always looking for the positive impact, and they're not actually understanding that there could be some negative impact going on as well. Now, if you were in the sporting arena, which some of you might be, working with sportsmen or doing health and well-being around sports, you'll know that it's absolutely unheard of to not measure your achievements and keep refining what you do until you become better at your skill or your sport. Because that's how you train, that's how you become, you know, sometimes an elite sportsman, is because you continually refine your strategies and your skill and your mindset around what you're trying to achieve. So why would it be any different in our sector? Why would we as organisations be continually refining our strategy and our processes and our skills around, and our mindsets as well, in terms of how we make decisions and what we think about our goals and how we think we're achieving our success? So we really need to know how we're doing. And we need to start thinking much more seriously, because funders I'll just tell you that, funders are thinking a lot more about how the impact that you're making. So if you don't, you're going to be left behind, because funders are going to pick the people who are really thinking through this carefully. So what this means that we need to do as organisations is start conducting some really good research, monitoring engagement and our impact, and really assessing how to improve your organisation. I was actually only speaking with a minister, a state minister here in Queensland yesterday, and we were having a discussion around whether we're very outcome focused or output focused, and I'm sure that you would have a great dialogue about that with me, because government traditionally, I believe, has been very output focused, and it's all about the numbers, it's all about quantifying what we do. But really, usually the heart and the mission of our organisations is about outcomes, and sometimes that's very hard to, I suppose, pull together in terms of how we make sure that we're not output focused just because our funders or the government is, when really we need to be much more outcome focused and become much more efficient within our organisations. So I've spoken to organisations who sometimes don't do any surveys. They don't ask for feedback from their clients or their staff. They don't ask them for their volunteers. They don't look at anything about their outcomes. And I'm shocked sometimes that there are still organisations that are not looking at their performance and really working out how we can be more efficient and effective with our funding. And as I said, as I just alluded to then, is that because there are so many dollars out there, but so many organisations wanting those dollars, that funders and donors aren't just simply giving money away anymore. You know, they've got, in fact, I heard the other day that there's one company that has 150 proposals a month coming via her desk. This is one person within a large company who gets 150 proposals a month from people who are looking for funding and sponsorship. Now, how are you going to stand out from the crowd if you're one of those people? You know, it really is, and how are those donors and funders thinking about who they're going to fund and what's the best strategic partner for them in terms of who they give their money to. So, you know, all donors don't give away their money lightly. They give it away to people who they think are going to achieve their goals as well. Winston Churchill, considered one of the, I suppose, the greatest leaders of all time, he said a great quote which I love. He said, "However beautiful the strategy, you should occasionally look at the results." And I try and remember that all the time in terms of my own work, you know, because I want to know how well I'm doing, and we need KPIs, and we need to know if you're actually achieving the goal that you set out to do. And we can't just do that in an ad hoc way all the time. We need to do that sometimes in quite a formalised way, and a way that everybody's doing it consistently across the organisation. This was a quote that just comes from a new report that's just come out, and I encourage you to get the full report and download it and have a look at it. But Wendy Scaife is the main author here from QUT, who's done some research into fundraising, and she says that many organisations are having to think differently and develop fresh skills, either to enter the fundraising market or to cope better with rising competition for community and corporate support. So it's out there that you know, the traditional ways of marketing and fundraising are not always working these days. We really need to think very innovatively in terms of how you're engaging your donors, the partnerships that you're creating, and the funding sources, because again, like I think Lisa mentioned earlier, it's no good to put all your eggs in one basket. Because if a government can change at the flip of a hat, a funder can decide that they're not going to fund you overnight. So it's no good to be able to put all your eggs in one basket, because you're risking your sustainability if you do that. So yes, so we need to think about creating strong partnerships, I think, with different people, and that is my last part of the sustainability pie, if you like. In terms of, I just want to think, I want to help you think a little bit about how you're engaging and creating partnerships with different people. Now, I'm talking about partnerships on a few different levels here, so let me just explain myself. The number one partnership, I believe, is with the people within your organisation, your staff and your volunteers and your board. Okay, because we know that the people within your organisation can either be the key to your success, or they can be your biggest risk and the cause of failure. And the reason why I say this is because you only have to think about, you know, what would happen if you couldn't find the right staff or the right volunteers. You know, what would happen if they didn't do their jobs? What if they just suddenly left, or they all resigned? What would happen if something that they did affected your reputation or your brand? What would happen if a staff member, for instance, was found bullying or was unethical? And what would happen if your staff and volunteers didn't have good customer service and didn't work with your clients and run the programs as you need them to? So your people are really your greatest asset, but they're also your greatest challenge. And they are also your greatest risk to sustainability. You only have to think that if you take away your staff and volunteers, what have you got? Probably not a lot. It's going to be very hard for you to build your organisation if you don't have good partnerships and relationships with the people that work for you and support you. They've done, obviously, a lot of research around employee engagement, and I thought I would just sort of touch on this for a second in terms of engagement is not an easy thing to do. And if you're struggling with engagement and making sure that staff have good role clarity and they're being productive with their time and they're meeting their KPIs, then you're not alone, because they've done research that shows 4 in 10 are considering leaving their organisation, and only 13% display strong commitment to their organisation's success. Now, this is across the board here, both for-profit and non-profit. And another study actually that was done not too long ago found that only 20% of 90,000 employees felt engaged. Now, that's a real big challenge for us, because the knock-on effect of not being engaged is critical to the success of your organisation. I mean, people don't come in on time, they don't get reports done, they don't achieve their goals, they're not productive, there can be low morale, they're not enthusiastic, they can be lacking confidence, resistant to change. The knock-on effect of engagement is massive. And so if only sort of, 20 to 40%, even if we're being sort of, thinking well here and thinking 20 to 40% of employees engaged, what are the other percent doing? What are the other sort of 50 to 70% of people doing? Well, even if they're just sort of slightly engaged, they're not performing to their optimum. And they can be your biggest headache, because they are usually the ones with performance problems. They're in a lot of conflict, they're not confident with their role, and they're resistant to change. So really, it is critically important that you look at the relationships that you have internally, and you really think about how you can not only determine how engaged your staff are, but then to build their skills and competence so that they love coming into work, that they love helping you as an organisation achieve the success that you need to. And hopefully don't leave the organisation, because as I mentioned earlier, the cost of people leaving work is incredible for you. Some people say that it's up to 150 times their salary that it can cost you as an organisation. Now, they did some research. This is a consultancy called Absolute Global, who did some large research into why people quit their jobs. And they found that these were the 10 top reasons why people quit. Things like understaffing, poor communication, lack of challenge, lack of empowerment, no recognition, limited work-life options, poor company culture, the employee's life situation has changed, questionable promotional practices, and no enjoyment. Now, when I look at that list, I feel sad, actually, because I think that at least 9 of those we can do something about. It might only just be 8. That might be something we can't always do something about. But all the others, it is possible to address in an organisation. And if we can have a look and see if any of those are affecting our staff and volunteers, then we can actually work on it and say, okay, how do we address some of these things so that people stay with us? Because we don't want to lose, certainly our good people, and the people who are really passionate and engaged. We don't want them, because of these issues, to become disengaged and leave our organisation. Now, one of the things that I talk to organisations a lot about is around organisational support, because traditionally in the not-for-profit sector you're working in human services, you're working with a very tight budget, you're working with complex clients, and you can be not-for-profit programs and services can be very tough sometimes. And as somebody mentioned earlier when I said it's Lara mentioned burnout can be one of those things that affects your staff and your volunteers. So they've done a lot of research into what can address that. And the researchers found that there's a need to ensure that both supervisors and administrators understand the importance of supporting their employees through the provision of continuing education, support, adequate resources, rewards for excellent work, fairness and sensitivity to workers' needs, and by simply being available to their workers for assistance and guidance when needed. Now, again, I think all of those things are completely within our possibility. I mean, you're probably doing some of that now, but I wonder if you know how well that is supporting your staff. Have you done any sort of review on what your staff and volunteers are appreciating and what is most critical for them? And it might be that different people need different things. Some people need education and they need training, whereas others feel confident but they need more resources, or they just need to make sure the morale is worked on. So you really need to have a look at your organisation. Now, all of this comes down to developing a healthy organisational culture, because if you don't have a good culture within your organisation, it is going to compromise your ability to be sustainable. And of course, I'm not going into what culture is right now. That's a whole different topic. But I think you understand that's how your people work together, and the practices and the mindsets that they have when they work together. And it's absolutely critical that you have unique people. Of course, no one's the same. You've got lots of different skills and different people within your organisation, but it's how you bring those together. And if you have good morale and good debating and innovation because of this unique differences between people. And I've done a lot of research into change, because as we know, our organisations are changing, and if your organisations are doing well, then you know that there's more change going on than ever, because when you grow and you get more funding and you have more staff and more volunteers and more donors, it creates change within your organisation. So it's becoming really clear that the sheer pace, pervasiveness and variety of change demands that your organisation's leadership cultures cultivates a culture enabling you to adapt and advance. Now, some organisations are great with this, and some organisations are not so good. But if you want to be a flourishing and healthy organisation, then you've got to build a culture within your team that means that they're looking for innovation, that they're looking for ways of improving and becoming more effective with what they're doing. And, I challenge you to think about how you do that. Do you get people to constantly reflect and look for ways that they can become more open to change? Because if they're not, they'll resist change. And resistance to change brings a whole lot of other problems. So we really want to try and get our employees and our staff and our boards as well to be open to change. So I'm speeding up a little bit, and I hope you're keeping up with me, and I'm not trying to cover too much here. But I wanted to go on quickly to the other part of sustainability, which is really looking at engaging and building with your other stakeholders. Okay, because this is not just your internal people. This is your other external stakeholders, like your other community services, your donors, your supporters and your funders. They're obviously critical again to your sustainability, because they're largely the people who are funding you, they are networking with you, they're making things happen, so what they're doing for you, obviously. But it takes time to build strong and respectful partnerships with these people, because they're not internal, they're not in your organisation all the time. They're out there in the community, and you need to actually work hard at developing good relationships with them. So you need to put a strategy around how you keep people engaged. And one of those ways is good communication. They've done research around what makes a highly effective organisation, and 83% of these organisations have stated that communication is an essential part of their organisation's overall strategy. So you need to think carefully about what is your beliefs and what are your processes around communicating, especially with your donors and your funders, to kind of keep them up to date with what you're doing and what's going on, the impact that you're making, the challenges that you're facing. So it's really important, though, that you think about a strategy, because you don't want to communicate every day with people who don't want to hear from you every day. I mean, these are not relationships that they want to hear your every little move, for instance. But they want certain types of information. And certainly with donors and sponsors, they want to be kept up to date, but they don't want to know every tiny little thing, and they don't want to maybe hear from you all the time. So it's really important that you make sure that you think about what is the information that we need to give them and what is the frequency that you give them. Lisa's just said that high communication at the beginning of a corporate partnership can drop off through the duration of a partnership, and that can be largely due to complacency, and also because you're just in the swing of things. You're right, Lisa, you know, you've set up this partnership, you're excited because you've got this new donor or funder, and then, you know, a couple of months later you just kind of forget about them, and they haven't forgotten about you. But again, it's about how you keep that enthusiasm up. If you don't have a strategy in place, you will find that your communication drops off. And in fact, I'm going to just skip over that because I want to get to the point of this is what I'd like to talk about, because that kind of led in really nicely, was managing the end of a funding relationship. Because I wanted to tell you just a little bit of a story, I suppose, of a donor who was from a large corporate organisation, and I was told this story by a friend of mine, a colleague and friend of mine, Abby Clements, who runs Infinity Sponsorship, and she told me that she was working with this large corporate company who provided a lot of money to different organisations. But what happened was a very typical thing is the CEO changed of that company, and we know that that happens a lot in corporates, okay, sometimes much more frequently even than not-for-profits. Leaders and CEOs come and go, and with them comes their own ideas about what they want to invest in, who they want to support, what strategies they want to take for that business. And very typically, this corporation was working with a new CEO who came in and decided, you know what, I'm going to have a change of plan here. I don't want to, we're going to focus on a different area of supporting organisations. So this lady who was in this business, and it was her task to go and tell her community funders, community partners, that she was going to end their funding. And she went to one organisation that the first one she went to was one that she'd actually had a really good relationship with. And it was mainly because they had worked very hard over a couple of years to build a relationship with her. They'd been regularly sending her reports and updates, and she'd been to see the program, and she'd met some of the staff and the clients. You know, she'd had a good relationship with them because she'd been kept in touch with them. Now, when she sat down with them and said, look, I'm really sorry, but we're actually going to end this funding partnership, the organisation took it really well. And because the main reason is because they had expected this day would come, even though they hadn't before talked about timelines particularly. They knew that this day was going to come. And so they'd already thought about sustainability, and they had a chat with her and they said, well, look, this is what we'd like to do. This is the program. We don't want to just sort of leave our clients high and dry. We've got some other interested people that might support it. Would you support us, you know, sort of having an exit plan? And of course, because of their foresight and because of their, I suppose, maturity around understanding that things change, she was really supportive, and they decided on a 3-year exit plan. So where over that 3 years, slowly the funding would be decreased. And she also helped them with some marketing campaign work so that they could start promoting this program to other businesses and other funders, so that they could try and get the funding sustained through other avenues. And so she was really pleased, and she said it was amazing how they were able to work on that exit plan together. But she had another organisation that she had to go to, and this was an organisation that she hadn't managed to create such a relationship with, because like Lisa just said, that their sort of enthusiasm had waned off very quickly after that they'd got the funding. So she didn't know them as well, and also they had had some staff changes as well. So that meant that she really hadn't sort of met the person that was taking over the role of managing that program. And so when she sat down with them and said, look, I'm sorry, the funding is coming to an end, she got a very different reaction from that organisation. They basically threw their hands up and said, I can't believe you're leaving us high and dry. What are you doing to our clients? Can you imagine, you know, this is going to really hurt our organisation. I mean, she basically, this person put the guilt trip on this corporate funder. And it sort of made her feel terrible, and you know, but there was no way, like her hands were tied. And so what she said was to this organisation, she said, well, look, I'm helping another organisation with some marketing campaigns. I can give you some, you know, help around, you know, promoting the program. And they just said, no, we don't want that. That isn't, we just want money, you know, and basically, they didn't accept her offer. And so what she did is she just basically set a timeline and said, well, basically I'm stopping your funding immediately. Now that probably did really hurt that organisation, but it was through their lack of foresight, and it was through their lack of maturity in terms of how they dealt with the fact that this funding was going to come to an end, that created such a different outcome for those two different organisations. So, you know, which organisation do you think came out better? You know, was it A, who had that foresight to think about the future and think about what would happen if we lost that funding, and how do we build that a relationship with that organisation so that when our funding finishes, whether it's sooner or later, whether it's planned or whether it's immediate, because, you know, things can happen and we can't always see the future. And it was organisation A, of course, that came out better because they'd had that foresight. So there is a great, you can find this. In fact, if you want it, I can send you a link. But basically, Grantcraft, this is an article, yes, that this gentleman wrote about the process of moving on. And I just thought I'd really show you this to give you some ideas around what you need to be thinking about when you're thinking about exit plans, or when you're thinking about funding coming to an end. So he talks about, you know, goals and timeframes, good communication, being flexible, and building the capacity to support the process of moving on, because it's not always about money. It's actually about the impact that you're creating through your program. So, you know, sometimes organisations programs don't continue. Sometimes you actually have to shut down programs, or the resources and money runs out. You know, but it's about saying, how do we make sure that that doesn't hurt us as an organisation, and it certainly doesn't hurt our clients. We don't want it to hurt the community that we're working with. So really thinking about that and celebrating the success that you've achieved. Because if your funder has been a partner with you and you've created some amazing programs, some amazing outcomes, then you want to be able to achieve, you know, celebrate your success with them. Because I'm hoping, because I work with businesses as well, that we're going to continue getting businesses and corporations to support the community. We don't want them to be hurt, or to be bitter about working with our sector. Because that's going to make it only harder for us to ask for sponsorship and money. So we've really got to, it's important for us to make it a good experience for the funder as well as the organisation. So here are my tips then. That really, when you're thinking about funding and you're thinking about sustainability beyond any particular pot of money, it's really about communication, but communicating honestly and respectfully and appropriately and relevantly, you know, whether it's a long-term donor or it's a short-term donor. Be flexible to the changing needs of your funders, and be prepared that anything could happen at any time. So have some foresight and be strategic. Be open and honest about timeframes. I mean, it's no good if you get some funding that you think is for 3 years, but the funder didn't mean it to last longer than 1 year. That's not going to have a great outcome for you. Now, I also suggest that you build in sustainability and capacity building within the funding. Okay. In fact, I was at a conference not long ago, a month ago, called Social impact measurement. And there was a lot of talk there about the fact that we need to actually build in capacity building within our funding when we ask for sponsorship and when we ask for funding. And we need to actually educate funders around this. Because if funders think that you only need a pot of money to run a program, and they don't realise all the other things that have to go on around that, then they'll only give you the money to run the program. But if we start educating, and that's where I've written give them constructive feedback as well, that's about sort of helping them learn about the sector and helping them learn about what it takes to run a program or a service in the community, because they often run their business very different to how we run our organisations sometimes. So it's about that partnership, about giving them feedback about what it takes to build the capacity and build sustainability into programs. And I think that once we start doing that, funders are going to be much more open to giving us dollars around, okay, what do you need in terms of evaluation? What do you need in terms of capacity building? So manage the expectations that you have between you, and also ask to be referred. You know, businesses and corporations and sponsors, and even if they're foundations, they hang out with other people like them. That's other people with money, and that's other sponsors and other people that are looking to donate their money. So ask to be referred to their friends and their colleagues. That's one of the easiest way to find other people that would like to get involved in your program and that might take over if there's some core sponsorship involved. And of course, be respectful at all times, and let's be mature about how we deal with these partnerships, because it won't help you if you're not respectful. So I really wanted then to just get you to think in the last couple of minutes then about, you know, how is your organisation building sustainability? And I've only just touched on a few of those issues, but I sent out a handout to you, and if you've got it in front of you, you might just find it useful. I'm just bringing it out in front of myself as well. There's just 7 things there, are questions that might prompt you to think about the key areas of sustainability. And these are not everything. I'm not saying this is it, you know, this is, if you do this you'll be fine. I'm not saying this is everything, but I am saying that these are some of the key things that you need to be thinking about in 2014. That if you want your organisation to be healthy and sustainable, having good relationships, having good management and leadership capabilities, engaging your workforce and having a great culture, and building relationships with your external supporters as well is a really good place to start. And it might just be that you need to take a bird's eye view sometimes and step back from the day-to-day running of your organisation, because many people in non-profits, they get very caught up in, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do that, and they don't have time to actually stop and do some reflection and do some good planning. But I talk to people all the time that if you do your planning really well, the actual implementation will be so easy for you and will be so much shorter time because you'll have planned it out really well. So if you're going into 2014 without any strategic planning, without any review of what you're doing, without any impact measurement, then you're going to find that you might get to the end of 2014 and you'll be in the same place. You won't have grown, you won't have been healthy, you would have had staff turnover, you wouldn't have flourished in the way that you really want to. So I'm really encouraging you to think about that. And it might be that you need to sit down with your board and your leadership and your staff and your volunteers and actually have this conversation about what different people think about what's going to make our organisation sustainable and effective, because your board might have different answers to your volunteers, and they might have different answers to your donors even. So have a think from different people's perspective. And really think then in terms of what do people think we need to do and spend our time on. And I would suggest, you know, have a look at that sustainability model and see if that can help you in any way. So I wanted to spend the last 5 minutes then is getting some of your feedback and your ideas. Has this created any questions for you, or what have you been writing down or thinking about as we've been talking about sustainability? Has this challenged you in any way, or is there any questions? Okay, so now feel free to go ahead and sort of give me some feedback, or if there's anything else that you'd like to talk about in the last couple of minutes. I'll let you type. Have you had any questions? What has that made you think about? Do you agree with what I've said today, or have I missed anything? Okay, we've got a question from Paddy. Says, how do you recruit and properly engage a board? Very good question, and not something that I can answer in 30 seconds. But I will say, though, the board are like any other person. They want to get involved for a reason, and there's many different reasons. So you need to ask them, why are you here? What is motivating for you to be here, and how can we use your strengths and your commitment to this organisation? Because people don't feel confident when they're put in a role that they don't know what they're doing, they don't know why I've had people come and sit on boards that I've been on, and they're not from the not-for-profit sector. They're either business people, or they're they're not service providers, and I've got them involved, and then they say, well, you use analogies all the acronyms all the time, and I don't know what you mean when you say this, and I don't mean, and that can actually put a barrier up for your board members if they don't understand what's going on, or what the kind of decisions that they're being asked to make. So it's really important that you build the skills and the capacity of your board. And look, I wasn't going to say this, but I will, because it's topical. I offer a very, very brilliant, I was going to say brilliant, board survey that you can do with your board to assess the skills and capabilities of your board. It's very, very cheap. It's online. I do it as a service to boards, because I know that it's very hard to review your board and actually find out where the strengths and weaknesses are. So if you go to Zark Consultancy, my Zark Consultancy website, and have a look, or you just email me, I'll send you all the details about that, because that is a great place for you to start if you want to know how to engage your board. Find out what's going well and find out what's not going well, and then start to address it from that. So, sorry, that's a kind of really simple answer, Patty, but I hope that's giving you some ideas. Any other questions that you've got? About, do you feel that you're going to be do you think you're going to be sustainable and flourishing in 2014? How many of the participants today are, oh, okay, Lisa's just asked, how many of you are CEOs? Could you tell me if you're a CEO? If this is, Lisa's interested, and I'm interested to find out if you are thinking about sustainability when you're a CEO. Patty is, yes? Okay, so if you're, oh, Patty's not. Okay, so have we got any CEOs, or are you, you've got other roles, I imagine, in your organisation? So if you're not a CEO, or you're giving information back to your CEO about sustainability, then you need to think very strategically about what you present to them. And if anybody would like that model, the diagram that I presented to you about the 3 key areas, just email me, and I'm happy to give you a handout of that, so you can use that as a tool to talk to your CEO or your board around sustainability. And yeah, so just email me and I'll send that through to you. So how do we transfer this information to the CEOs? Well, I really think it's about asking them to discuss, you know, what are the key areas of your business, and what you're doing to make sure that you're future thinking, that you're strategic about that long-term you know, how are we going to make sure that by the end of 2014 we have good relationships, we have good management and leadership, and we're making good decisions, and we know the impact of our services and programs? I think that's the best place to start your conversation with people. Lara's asked my email address. I will, do you know what? I will just email it out to you all. Would you like me to do that? I will just, because I've got your email addresses, and I'm very happy to send that, that handout to you all. Okay, everybody's saying yes. Okay, I will send that out, and if you've got any questions, then of course then you can email me back and ask me if you've got any questions. All right, so is there any final questions or anything else that you'd like me to discuss before I hand back to Jenny? If you don't know, you can download a report that I've written called 10 Fundraising Mistakes That Can Be Fatal to Your Organisation. Feel free to go to the pillartobestpractice.com website and you can download that, and that will also give you a lot of food for thought in terms of what are you doing to build relationships with your funders and your donors. So that's freely available. Please go and download that for yourself. And also, I'm on Facebook. I have 2 Facebook accounts. One is called Pillars of Best Practice, which is really targeted at issues for non-profits. So I do share a lot of tools and information and inspiration around not-for-profits. And my Zark Consultancy Facebook is all about leadership and management and things that are critical for you as leaders and managers. So either, like either or both of those Facebook posts, and you can keep in touch with me. You can ask me questions. You can engage with me there. It's a great place to keep up to date with everything that's going on. And that's my job, I suppose, as a coach and as a consultant, is to try and keep you thinking about this critical stuff, and so that you can grow your organisation and you can be a healthy organisation and you can achieve the goals and the success that you want to do. So thank you very much for attending today. I hope that you've got something out of it, and I hope that I haven't overwhelmed you either, because I was very conscious that I was sharing a lot of information, but I didn't want to, I really wanted to challenge you and get you thinking about a lot of things. So hopefully, yeah, you've just not been overwhelmed, but you're going away with some things to do and some ideas to take away back to your organisation.